Well, Gordon, the farmers started gathering pretty early here in London. There was a photo shoot just behind us. Conservative MPs and farmers came together. Kemi Badenoch, the leader of the opposition, knows there's some good politics in this, as well as some very, very sad and tough stories from the farmers that we've spoken to. The first person we caught up with was Victoria Atkins. She's the Shadow Environment, Food and Rural Affairs Minister. Victoria Atkins joins us on College Green, just outside Parliament. Victoria, you've travelled down from your constituency. Tell us a bit about it, because it's a big farming constituency, isn't it?
I'm so lucky. It's an enormous rural and agricultural constituency in the beautiful county of Lincolnshire. And I found a fact out the other day. Apparently Lincolnshire is the single largest agricultural county in the country. So when we say we are the breadbasket of the United Kingdom, we are actually telling the truth, much as Yorkshire farmers would have you believe otherwise.
And what have you been hearing from your constituents who are farming since the announcement that Labour made?
Well, look, I have very good relationships actually with my farmers, and all of us Conservative MPs that are lucky to represent rural and agricultural seats, these relationships that we build up, but we also know the pressures that farmers face. You know, farming is a tough way to earn a living. Farmers enjoy it. It's part of their DNA. They're raised from the cradle to farm, but it also comes with very real pressures, particularly financial. And so one of the tax policies that has been crafted over many years is this relief on inheritance tax, which acknowledges that family farming is key to our agricultural sector. It's key to ensuring that our countryside remains as beautiful and well maintained as it is. But people can only do that with this relief because, of course, in this very small and popular and congested island, we know that land prices can be very, very high. And so this tax relief enables families to pass on their family farms to the next generation. And I've been listening to many farmers actually around the country who are deeply distressed by this change because they can see that their farm, it will bring the end to their family farm.
I think some people have actually been writing to you about their experience. Can you tell us about any of those constituents who have written to you?
So in fairness, farmers from around the country, and I asked farmers for their worries, for their examples for how this would affect it. So, for example, a lot of people seem to think, or Labour MPs seem to think, that farmers automatically own the land that they farm, and this is simply not the case. And one of the massive gaps in this budget concerns tenant farmers, because I've had, for example, a Welsh landowner say to me that he is going to have to sell the 6 tenanted farms on his property in order to pay his inheritance tax bill when that moment comes. And so that means 6 multi-generational farming families who've farmed those farms for generations being kicked off, being evicted, losing their livelihoods, and their children having, as he says it, having their futures snatched away from them. Another example is a farmer in the centre of England, a very, very expensive part of England, where on paper, his farm is worth millions. It's an incredibly popular part of the world, particularly for housing developers. And on paper, his farm's worth millions, but last year, they received an income of £19,000. Now, when this older farmer is sitting around the kitchen table talking to his relatives, they are actually having conversations about if he survives beyond March 2026 when this change is made, whether he is a burden to them, because he will end up costing them over £1 million in inheritance tax. And these conversations around kitchen tables, I don't think for a moment that Treasury or DEFRA ministers have understood the impact of their policies, because I cannot believe that they would be comfortable to know that a Labour Party policy, this tax change, is having this impact on family farms and around kitchen tables up and down the UK.
Victoria, the government is trying to claim that this policy will only affect about 500 farms a year. What's your response to that?
So they say that. Everybody else, including the NFU, the Country Land and Business Association, the Tenant Farmers Association, and farmers, their accountants, their business advisors, and farmers themselves, who, by the way, are business people and know how to run a business, they are all saying this is simply not right. And I went to a meeting last night with a Treasury Minister and a DEFRA DEFRA minister to try to understand how they've arrived at these figures. Of course, their own departments are contradicting each other over the figures, and it turns out that yesterday, not only from the Treasury Minister, not only are they not counting all three of the, if you like, the routes into inheritance tax reliefs, APR, BPR and BPR alone, they are counting only 2 out of the 3 of those routes, but also they have no idea about the value of the farming unit. So what that means is you could have someone who has bought a paddock next to their home to put a pony in, to enjoy having, if you like, a little bit of a hobby farm. They are counted as well as the farmers that I've met who are farming 500-acre farms that are genuinely feeding the country. And the fact they don't have those facts to hand means that this is a bad decision and they are making it on bad facts. And that is why, I've never seen farmers this angry and this distressed. This is why they're taking the unprecedented step of coming to London today, leaving their farms from all over the UK to come and try and be heard by these ministers, because they just don't seem to be listening.
Yeah. Do you think this is a fight that the government is destined to lose?
Well, I very much hope that they will be grown up enough to concede that they have made a mistake and they want to go back and to the drawing board and see what they can do to deal with these concerns. Look, nobody, and I say this as a former Treasury Minister, nobody wants abuse of the tax system. Of course not, and of course that must be tackled. But the reality of this policy is that they are hurting tenanted farmers and farmers in the middle. The chances are, the very, very wealthiest of landowners will probably have complex legal arrangements that will protect them from this. What I'm so worried about, and why we have so many people here today, is that it's the farmers who feed us who are in the middle of all this.
Rachel Reeves' argument, and she says that there will be no U-turn, is that the money that will be raised or may be raised from this tax change will be used to fix the NHS and public services. How do you feel about that argument that it's because of the state of the public finances that tough decisions have to be made?
It's economically illiterate. It is as economically illiterate as her argument in the summer that the woes, as she sees it, of public services are to be solved by snatching winter fuel payments from pensioners who are on an income of £13,000. There seems to be a theme developing here where this Labour Party that claims to be progressive, claims to care about the most vulnerable in society, are utterly disconnected from the people who will be living with the realities of their policy. And the fact that there is this disagreement between Treasury and DEFRA on their own figures, the fact that there seems to be a misunderstanding within Treasury as to whether or not spousal allowances can be transferred, because Rachel Reeves says they can't, but a Treasury document says they can, Treasury document says they can't. The fact that thousands of farmers have read this policy, they've taken advice, and yet they know that this will affect them very, very deeply and very harshly. The fact she doesn't see any of that, I'm afraid, reveals a worrying inability to look afresh at the facts and to build a budget around the facts. There were many broken promises in this budget, but the inheritance tax was definitely one of them, because they had said before the election that it was desperate nonsense, they weren't going to change this. They also, of course, made that infamous promise about national insurance, but we know it's going to hurt not just farm employers, but it's going to hurt businesses on high streets, up and down the economy, up and down the country, and it will have a real impact on us all.
What can the Conservatives do? You're quite a small number of MPs now in Parliament. What next for you? And could you see a situation where there could be a farmers' strike if the government doesn't change?
Well, first and foremost, we have already said that when we're next in government, we will reverse this family farm tax, because we understand it to be so harmful. But in the medium term, we will be supporting our farmers. We will be trying to shine a light on these supposed figures that the Treasury is relying on. I have to say, there are almost as many questions about these figures as there are questions about Rachel Reeves' CV. But what we want to do is to continue putting pressure on the government because we hope that is how they will change. And ultimately, actually, it is for citizens to decide whether this is, particularly in rural areas, whether their Labour MP that they voted for in good faith, whether that Labour MP is serving them and their rural community to the best of their ability. We will see today whether Labour MPs have the courage to meet farmers who are coming to Parliament to lobby them. We've noted already that City Steve Reed, the DEFRA Secretary, hasn't bothered to come out today to defend his policy, nor has the Chancellor. What we want to see is that those Labour MPs take their commitments to their constituents seriously, and I hope they will be putting pressure on the Chancellor to change from within the Labour Party as well as those of us outside of the Labour Party.
Victoria Atkins, thank you very much for joining the Daily Tea.
Thank you so much, a pleasure.
Well, noticeable that the farmers have come up with a new slogan, haven't they? It's Keir Starmer, Farmer Harmer, which I rather like.
Yeah.
They're searching for that Margaret Thatcher milk snatcher moment, aren't they? And they're definitely getting there. Anyway, we after we'd spoken to Victoria Atkins, we spoke to a farmer from North Devon. She's Janet Herningham.
So you've come down to London from Devon. Just tell us who you are and where's your farm.
Okay, we farm just outside of Torrington in rural North Devon, so we're probably about the 6th generation of farmers. So we've got a small family farm, about 150 acres, 200 dairy cows, and it's important to come and talk today. I think I'm really aware that our rural MPs can hopefully understand the issues and challenges, but our urban MPs are dealing with different things every day. They're dealing with immigration, visas, housing issues, and a whole range of other things. So it's really hard to understand where your food is actually coming from and what it means. So as a small family farm, all of these changes, and not just the family tax, it's a whole range of things that affect us, could actually change the whole landscape of where the food can be produced in our countryside. And it's really interesting. Farm values look high on paper to many people living in houses, but it's not an asset you can sell. We're custodians and it's there to produce food. And if you start trying to split it up, it just won't be a sustainable, viable business going forward. So I think it's important for us all to try and understand each other's challenges and opportunities, city, rural, and trying to find a way that can make it work, that we can still produce food.
Have you sort of sat down and done the sums and worked out how much this would cost you if this policy sticks?
Well, we've already started to be proactive with succession, which is a really challenging subject within farming. It has a huge impact on mental health, financial and emotional resilience right across farming generations. And we've gone through quite a challenging period to actually get to the point where we are, where our young daughters have come into the business and my husband's parents have retired out of the business. And we thought we'd got it right. We thought we'd been proactive, been through the pain, sorted a lot of things. And even with these changes, we sat down for an initial meeting with the accountant and we've got some significant planning to do with cost and risk. And potentially we're young enough to be able to forward plan that and put different provisions in place and life policies to try and mitigate if tax comes in. But many generations, and this is the challenge for farms, because of the rules as they've been, many older generations are still still have the assets, and that could cause a real problem across the whole industry.
Yeah, sorry. I was asking about the sums. Have you worked out how much it would cost you?
We're still in the process. At the moment, the accountant has sent us off to gather a whole range of information because we've transferred the farm down through, and it's really complicated, and it's complicated for the accountant, let alone us as lay people. Yeah. And so we haven't got a final figure yet that we're going to have to cover, but it's significant. And we're probably not as bad as a lot of people. And that's the risk for me, really, is how do farms, if you sell bits off, you could end up with a farm that isn't big enough still to produce food. It's so hard to be viable these days. So it's trying to balance it all, really.
If it is a large bill, which you expect, what effect would that have on your family? And would your family be able to continue farming?
For many families, no. I've always worked off farm in a professional job as well to support our family income and our farm income, which has probably brought us a little bit of resilience. We're still working class. I finished work at midnight. I've worked on the way up this morning. And so we work really hard. Could we continue? We're probably young enough at this stage to be able to put policies and pay for solutions. but it comes at a cost because we're still paying our older generation off for transition, and we've already paid one lot of tax across transfer, and we're tiny. 150 acres sounds huge to lots of people living in cities, but as a farm business to keep trading it is small. We're hoping that proactively that if we get on it, that we might be able to work our way around it, but some family farms won't survive.
You were showing us your cows. Let's have a look. Let's have a look at your farm. Is this morning or yesterday or?
This is this morning.
Yeah.
So this is my husband getting the cows in this morning before I left. So we've got 200 cows. They produce high quality milk to go into cheese through Parkham Farms, which is a small processor in North Devon, and ends up on Tesco shelves as mature cheddar.
Okay, are they Friesians?
We have 3 different crosses in ours. So we have a Friesian mix.
This is a classic black and white dairy cow you're showing us to me.
And some of the others would have brown and spots on. So we cross with the Normand, which is a French breed for cheese making because it gives a better value, and then also a Norwegian red cow. So a 3-way cross is really great for grazing natural grass, which is great for the environment. So our cows have been out every day until Sunday. They're now in their winter housing because it's gone a bit chillier, but they've been out grazing grass. So really natural, wholesome production.
Is it tough making a reasonable profit in farming?
Yes. So my outside job is supporting other farmers to stay resilient and try and be financially sustainable. And I'm scared by what I see on a lot of trading accounts. And we've had some funding through DEFRA Future Farming Resilience programs, which is sort of done some work, but not got a lot of farms, the whole way down because you need to invest. So we're just looking at putting robotic milking in because of the shortage of rural labour and the cost of labour. So, the budget hits one thing, but it also has hit many other rural businesses in terms of minimum wage rises, employers' national insurance contributions. So we're having to look at alternative ways. If we invest in robotic milking, it's probably £400,000 to us on top of an existing trading borrowing, on top of helping support our older generation through succession. That's a big borrowing on a small family farm.
And can you give us an idea of what the total value of your farm would be and what the profit that you make on it is?
Profit varies. Milk prices have varied from over the last 5 years. Milk prices have dropped as low about 25p a litre to 52p a litre. Can you imagine that big, massive, and they reckon break even on milk price at the moment is somewhere high 30s to 40p, and we're being paid just above 40p. Our cows, how we farm, thankfully, not every farm can do this, but because we can graze some grass, we've been able to be quite efficient and trade through the peaks and troughs. But lots of farms, that is enough to already unstabilize a business, those peaks and troughs in milk price, let alone the other changes. So our farm is probably worth, it's above the million threshold. So 150 acres is probably worth, we might be just shy of 1.5 to 1.75 million, might just hit 2. But it's a tiny farm in the big scheme of things. And our profit in comparison, if you, and that's the thing, there's a big variable in farming. If you look at the value of that asset versus the profit, some farmers on a farm that side would break even. Some might make profit some years, some might make losses other years. So there's a real balance of performance.
Yeah. Do you think Labour understands any of this?
I think it's really hard if you're based and serving urban communities with their own range of challenges and issues and opportunities, to really try and connect back to the countryside and to really understanding farming. So I grew up on a farm. I married a farmer. My farmer husband's, their family farm's been there 150 years, and the farm's been there a lot longer, but they've been there 150 years. And unless you breathe, eat, sleep farming and the community, it's really hard to try and understand. And as busy politicians, they're trying to handle everybody else's challenges. So for me, my message is, how do the rural MPs help the urban MPs understand the challenges and the realities of the implications of these changes? And likewise, we need to learn how our urban, what the urban challenges are. So we need to work together as a country.
Well, it was great to see Janet so enthusiastic about her farm, showing us pictures of her cows being milked. She made a couple of interesting points, I thought. One was that she wasn't angry about Labour. She just said that Labour just didn't understand farming, and she said urban MPs have their own challenges, which I thought was interesting.
Yeah.
She also touched on this issue about farming incomes, which sometimes can be forgotten. DEFRA brought out figures on Friday which showed that because of things like the energy crisis, which lots of people have faced, inflation, input costs for farming have gone up really rapidly over the last year, and farming incomes have therefore been cut. And in cereal farming by 76%, which is a remarkable figure. So there are lots of challenges beyond the inheritance tax issue that farms are facing.
Yeah, they were struggling already before being hit by all this stuff in the budget. I do worry. Well, the more you speak to farmers, the more you worry that perhaps the government just hasn't really done its homework and doesn't really understand the economies of farming. Victoria Atkins was saying to us there, wasn't she, that a farm that may be worth £8 million, they might only actually make £19,000 at the end of the year, and they are working every hour. They're probably working for a couple of pounds an hour if you worked it out. So I'm not sure that Labour really understands that, and that's why these people are here today, to try and get that message across.
You caught up with Kemi Badenoch just a few minutes ago here at College Green. What did she say?
Well, I would say that I'm very, very excited to see so many people out supporting and backing farmers.
It's a good
and
turnout.
It is. This is an important issue. This is how we are demonstrating that we are the party for the countryside, and this is a Conservative issue. It's property rights, it's family, it's all the principles the Conservatives need to get behind.
Victoria Atkins, who we also caught up with a bit earlier, she was talking about the Labour MPs here, many of whom have won rural seats. Let's not forget that Labour had a big majority. Will some of those feel it necessary, defending small majorities, that they have to come out and say something about a possible pause or a reanalysis or a reevaluation of the numbers? I think Rachel Reeves has got herself trapped, and it actually goes back before the last election. When she said no increase in national insurance, no increase in VAT, and no increase in income tax, it only left her to raise more money, targeted tax increases on groups of people. And as Victoria Atkins said, one of those were pensioners, and another group is farmers. So the Chancellor has got herself stuck in this position where every tax rise she puts in place doesn't affect all of us. If she put up income tax by a penny, everyone will have been annoyed, but everyone would have been affected. Whereas pensioners and then farmers, there's a danger for the Treasury. It starts to look not only ignorant, they don't know the numbers, but also callous. They're picking on groups. And that's because Rachel Reeves trapped herself in a situation where I'm going to have to take a lot more tax from small groups of people.
Yeah, and you say it doesn't affect all of us, but it does affect all of us because employers' national insurance going up means that wages go up. That means costs go up. We're all going to see the difference in prices in the shops. Some people will see a difference in their pay packet because employers won't be able to pay them as much. Some people will lose their jobs. So it is affecting all of us, but they're trying to do it in a sort of indirect way that they hoped people wouldn't notice, but people certainly have noticed.
Such is the size of the Labour majority. I mean, I asked Victoria Atkins this. It's difficult to see. If Rachel Reeves has decided no U-turn, it is hard to see how Parliament can do anything aggressive enough to get the government to change its mind. You can imagine, if there is no change to the policy, that farmers will step up. And if we remember the fuel protests of the 2000s, which brought roads to a standstill and emptied the garages of fuel, food as rapidly could stop being delivered to supermarkets, and then the government has a real problem.
Yeah, I do think she is going to have to U-turn on this. At the very least, I think she's going to have to water it down. I think she's picked the wrong fight. I think the public will be very sympathetic towards the farmers. As you say, if it starts affecting food in the shops, people will say, "What's going on?" If she's got Jeremy Clarkson on a case. The next series of Clarkson's Farm, we've said it before, maybe all about Rachel Reeves. I think they will have to do something to show that they are listening.
I remember covering the fuel protests, and Labour was something like 40 points ahead in the polls, and a month later they were behind. And Blair said, I think in his memoirs later, or certainly later, how quickly, if the public don't think the government is in control, their polling numbers collapse. And Keir Starmer is in a far weaker position than Labour, than 1997 Labour ever were.
Yeah.
I just think there's some rattle, there's some warning there in the system that Rachel Reeves and Keir Starmer need to be careful of.
I think you're right. As you say, Blair didn't have this sort of first 100 days that Keir Starmer has had. So, anyway.
Pouring with rain, Gordon. So I think we'll go and find a bit of shelter and listen to a bit more of the rally.